Thanks for joining. Just adding Lily. Okay. There she is. Awesome.
Here
hey, Lily.
I am. Good morning. How are
you? Good. How are you?
Super. I am caffeinated. So
yep, we both have our coffee.
I'm always caffeinated, as you know by now.
Yes. Awesome.
Very exciting. Brewing success.
Yes. Our first episode. I'm so excited to dive in.
Very excited. And it's actually such a serendipitous way that you and I sort of cross paths.
Definitely. Yeah. A little bit of Sweetbriar magic, if you will. And for those that don't know, Sweetbriar is a college in Virginia.
That's right. And my wife went to that college, and I wrote my doctoral dissertation about how it almost closed but didn't.
Yeah.
And so I now consider myself an honorary member of the Sweetbriar community, and it's a fantastic one. So very excited, Bree, to have connected. I love your subject matter expertise. I love the fact that we're looking at things that really matter to us. And, I think this IG series is kind of melding those two things together because there's a ton of overlap here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm excited to share it with everyone and see what questions they have as we go through it.
That's great.
So let's kick off the basics. I know we wanted to introduce ourselves to people that don't know us or might not know us from each other's platform. So I can go first if you want.
Please.
Cool. So my name's Brianna, and I am a copywriter, marketer in the nonprofit space. My background is in environmental and animal law, and during the pandemic did some soul searching and realized I wanted to be more on the creative side of helping out nonprofits in their mission. There's a lot to do because there's a lot of good work being done that's simply being ignored by the powers that be. It's part of the reason that I left law. Our political and legal systems aren't set up to allow for the change that a lot of the groups are really working towards in really fantastic ways. So now I help with messaging and getting those important missions out there and helping people clarify what they're working on so people outside of their issues really understand and can get behind and support it. And that's where Lily comes in and why we connected, because the amazing work that she does with fundraising and messaging, it all comes together and it's so important to talk about. So Lily, go ahead and introduce yourself.
We didn't just connect because of my logo and your background in animal.
I chose the dog mug for a reason because of your fantastic logo. So
that's part of business, and I think you can attest to this, is that you have the opportunity to name it whatever you want and what's meaningful to you. And I definitely took the opportunity to do that. And I love to talk about my dog and my logo. And, obviously we have the word philanthropic in there. So what does all that mean? So, like you, I was sort of in the rat race, the real world, whatever you want to call it. I've worked in philanthropy and fundraising for my entire career. So I started as a graduate student at my alma mater. And I have worked in the nonprofit and education space since then, and I love it. There's nothing more fulfilling for me than joining forces with an organization and helping to move the needle, because the reality is financial support is key in terms of moving the needle for organizations and doing great work. So I did that. I worked for one organization at a time. I worked my way up the career ladder. It was a great time. But I've always sort of felt like, having been on the other side as a client for fundraising consultants, the scope of work was somewhat limited and it was kind of overpriced, and it really didn't offer that bespoke experience that is so necessary for organizations. Every organization is different. Every organization is unique. So guess what? Their experience with a consultant should be unique also. So that's why I started Black Dog Philanthropic last May. It's been a wild ride. It's been terrifying. It's been amazing. It's been fulfilling. It's been all of those things. So as I approach my 1-year anniversary on my own, I couldn't be more thrilled. I've had the opportunity to work with 7 different organizations in that time. working on everything from campaigns to year-end solicitations, to, sponsorships, to 501c3 registration, which is something that we're going to talk about today. So very excited to be here. And again, I'm so excited for this continued collaboration, because this one is going to be kind of heavy with me talking about IRS compliance. If you're not IRS, maybe hang up now, but it's important, and it's a very necessary part when we're talking about doing all of your due diligence to make sure that if you want to start a nonprofit, you're doing it correctly. Next time, Bree, it's going to be really more about you and your subject matter. I'm so excited to hear about that.
Well, and I love that it complements so well that we can go back and forth like this and really help people understand what it takes to run a nonprofit from the very beginning to through scaling. So why don't you dive in? Let's get started.
Let's do it. So here's the thing. So you're here because you're one of Bree's many followers. I have 60 followers. I'm only 37 away from being an influencer, I think.
Definitely.
I think that's the we'll go with it. So maybe you're coming to this Instagram live because you're into the copy world. Maybe it's because you are a do-gooder like we are and you're really interested in starting your own nonprofit. Maybe you already work for a nonprofit and are just interested in nuts and bolts. I find that it's really neat. I've learned a whole lot about compliance in a short period of time, though I've been on the other side working for nonprofits that were already established. So, I really like to sort of get under the hood of things and understand why they work and what their mechanisms are. So the first thing that I would say is, if you're interested in starting a nonprofit, know that there are 1.8 million registered nonprofits according to the IRS. Wow. So that's a lot, right? And if you really want to get nerdy about it, there were about 1.5 in 2016. So if you think about that expansion and that growth, a lot of people want to do great work, which is a fantastic problem to have. But look at what other organizations are doing. Make sure that you're not duplicating efforts. Because if you decide that you want to start a nonprofit, you're embarking on a journey. And that journey is, a lot of compliance. And you really just want to make sure that you're not cannibalizing yourself. Because if you think about it, if you have another organization in the area that's doing the exact same work, you're probably going to have a hard time getting purchase and really establishing yourself. So let's say you're one of one and there's no one doing what you want to do. And so you check that box. You looked it up. You say, you know what? I still want to go for this. That's fantastic. Let's talk about what a nonprofit is and what it is not. A lot of people don't realize this. A nonprofit is actually a corporation. And a 501c3 is an IRS status for tax exemption. So nonprofits are corporations. Okay. They're just tax exempt, if that makes sense.
It does.
I'm not really deep into the different categories. The vast majority of stuff we're going to be talking about is 501c3. There are 501c4s, 501c6s for lobbying and other different things. The vast majority of people are going to be looking for 501c3 status, okay? But just know that it's a corporation, but it's tax exempt. So there are three primary types, what we're talking about. A public charity, which is the vast majority, I would say 95%. A private foundation, which, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, perfect example, first one that came to mind. That's a private foundation. And then you have a private operating foundation, which I'm not even going to talk about because it's so few. So few organizations do that. But if you're on this call and you want to start a nonprofit, chances are you want to go for that public charity status, okay? So I'm going to kick it over to you because the next most important thing you need to think about is, what's your mission going to be? This is where you come in.
Definitely. Well, and to your point of researching to make sure that you're not duplicating something that's already out there, that's where defining your mission and defining your why really comes into play. And it helps you clarify what sets you apart, not only for yourself and your team, but also for people in the public that want to support you or grants that you apply to. They understand why they should support you or how they can support you and other people, and they're not duplicating within a certain niche or a certain area, a certain issue. So It might seem obvious to you, and I really want to stress this, what you do already or what you want to do, especially when you have this great idea or you see this need and you really want to solve it. It can seem really clear to you. My background working in nonprofits from the legal side, we really understood the legal issues that were happening and why it was such an issue for animal rights. But in order to transfer that knowledge to the public to get their support for our various lawsuits, we had to really break it down and explain from day one what happened. So one of the first exercises that you can do when you have this idea is really sit back and write a story to yourself as if you have no experience in the issue that you're looking to solve. Why is it an issue? Who's hurting? What can you do about it? What's your big idea to solve the problem? I'm a really big fan of free writing, and it's an exercise you can do with your team too. And if you do have a team, that is. And if you don't, that's totally fine too. The more you can free write within specific areas that you want to work through, such as, let's say, there's a policy side, there's a grassroots side, there's even a legal side, or it's just rescue. Like, let's say you rescue black dogs and that's all you do. Like, that is in itself a story that you can tell. Tell the stories of the dogs that you're rescuing, and then extrapolate from that. What is the overarching mission? What are the overarching values in each of the stories that you've free written from your experience of doing the work in the nonprofit that you want to start? And then from there, once you start seeing those major themes come out, the words that you're using over and over again in these stories, you can put it into formulas such as, we are blank who help blank because blank, or we rescue dogs because we're working towards eliminating the stray pet population because we want to eliminate suffering. You know, fill in blanks, but keep it very formulaic, very simple, because the simpler it is, the more clear it is, and the easier it is to explain to someone that's outside of this, or someone in the grant space who's reading so many different applications and they get them all confused in their head. It's human nature, right? So the more clear and concise you can be, the more you'll stand out, the bigger impact you will have on the person that's reading your messaging. And to that point, the more that you can pull out specific actions that you want to accomplish with each of the missions, if you will. Like, I want to rescue 20 stray dogs that are out in the woods in this specific state, and I know where they are and I know what they need. And then we also want to get vet care, and here's how we're going to do vet care. And then we also want to have a foster program, and here's how we're going to do the foster program. The more you can define your actions as well, and what each of those actions takes, will help when you're applying to grants, will help when you're writing and communicating with your supporters, because they will be able to picture in their mind what each of your programs looks like, what each of your actions looks like. And so this broader value-based mission that you've come up with will then solidify for them, because they can picture what picking up a stray dog off the street looks like, and they can feel those emotions that you felt when you rescued that dog. So the more that you can get specific and clear and simple, the better your messaging is going to be, and the easier it is to be able to move forward with your nonprofit organization, because from the start, you'll be very clear on who you're helping, why you're helping them, and how you're going to help them. And I know this can seem like a very, very daunting task, and I don't expect anyone to come off this live like, oh yeah, I got it, or I'm going to go free write and it's all going to be solved. So if you go to free write or you're telling stories and you're just like, oh, I really don't know how to make this simpler, I want you guys to message me. I'm happy to help you simplify it. I'm happy to bounce ideas off of you and say, hey, are you really talking about rescue here, or is it more of an adoption program? Because sometimes talking to someone else, especially when you don't have another team, can help you verbalize and find those issues and that mission that you really want to work towards. So I know Lily wants to be a resource for anyone watching as well. So I think I can speak for both of us when I say, please message us with your questions. If you want to pop them in the chat here, please feel free to, but know that we are here for you to help clarify and help you move your ideas forward.
That's right. And if you want to be my 64th follower, now's your opportunity. There's only one.
Yes, we got to get that 64th follower for you.
So it's so important what you've hit on just so many points. And to bring it back to why it's important in terms of becoming an organization, your mission and your vision for your organization. Everyone knows what a mission and a vision is, right? Mm-hmm. Any nonprofit, higher ed institution, we've got one. The language that you select now is going to be your North Star for your organization. And to Brianna's point, so key to be thinking about that now, not only from a potential funding perspective, but from a supporter perspective. It also helps keep your internal controls tight because it always gives you something to point back to. Because when you start your nonprofit and 5 years down the road, you're wildly successful, you want to make sure that you're staying true to that mission. Mission creep is a real thing. Yeah. We could probably do a whole Instagram live on that.
Yeah.
But this is why it's really important to be doing that work now. Start to think about it. You know, what is my mission? I've worked with a client very recently. We agonized over incorporating the word grassroots. Because guess what? Adding the word grassroots changed everything.
Wow.
Because adding the word grassroots puts a very local and regional focus on something versus something that might be a little bit more national. Yes, it closes some national funding opportunities, but guess what? It really refines your scope of work and your mission. So that's the kind of stuff. That's why language is really important from a funding perspective and from a registration perspective. Because once you incorporate your mission, you can change it, but it's really difficult and really logistically time consuming. So spend the time, think about it. And again, it really benefits everyone in the long term. And you're so right about, you know, come up with some crisp messaging. Yeah. People want to give to people. People don't want to give to organizations. Our job is to align people who want to do great work with things that they care about. Mm-hmm. So how can your messaging be supporting that so that you can make sure you're getting the most direct link to those people that want to be part of your great work? By the way, you said people can, you know, saving just black dogs kind of sounds like a great idea. I might.
I mean, if anyone listening wants to start, I think you have your first funder in Lily. So.
Write the first check for you. No.
It's so true, though. And that goes to the person perspective of Lily would want to help someone because she understands that person's values and that person's mission. So the more you can define who you are so they can see themselves in you and know that you are helping them achieve a goal that they have too, helps a lot when you have the funding conversation.
And it's so nice to think about these things holistically because, to be honest with you, I'm about to give you some really concrete steps of awesome. How to register in the state of Maryland. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not an attorney. Everyone's tax situation is different. Regulations. I reside in the state of Maryland, so I'm giving you the Maryland step-by-step. Reach out to me if you have any questions on your state specifically. I can help point you in the right direction. Largely, the steps are going to be the same, okay? So just want you to think about that. But what I love about this conversation that we're having is some people get really bogged down in the paperwork.
Yeah.
And the paperwork can get, it's not that challenging, but it's cumbersome. Mm-hmm. It's really important to always be thinking about, why am I doing this? How can I integrate that messaging, that mission, those value sets into this work? Because the reality is you're going to be filing some stuff with the state of Maryland or with your respective state and the IRS that are going to be spelling some of these things out. So it's really important to be doing these things at the same time. So you're not one of the 1.8 million nonprofits that already exist. You've thought about and workshopped and free written your mission and vision, and you've got it all down. And now what do you do? Now what I want you to do is I want you to think about a name for your organization. Mm-hmm. For me, there was never a question. It was Black Dog. But I needed to make sure that nobody else was Black Dog Philanthropic Consulting. So your state, and in Maryland, it's the state business entity search. Just Google something like that, Maryland, Virginia, whatever. And you want to look up, just search your name, your prospective name. Make sure no one else already has it. Because if they already have it, you can't take it. your state's website will be pretty clear on that. So then what I want you to do once you have your name is you got to recruit a board. So nonprofits have boards of directors, and it would be great to have a writer or somebody who really can and help you think through some of these things. But everybody brings different skill sets to the table. Why is this group important? This is an important group because they're going to be your founding board of directors. They're going to be signing off on some really key documents that we're going to talk about in a minute. But more importantly, they're going to be your best first volunteers. So you should be looking for people that also want to rescue 20 black dogs, right? Or also have a black dog, or also have a pink barn, or maybe, you're going to be relying really heavily on that group. And so you want to make sure that you're being really selective about that group. It might be really easy to call one of your friends and say, hey, I'm filling out this IRS thing and I need a board. Do you want to be on it? You could do that, but think about that, because you really want to be able to rely on this group as sort of the inaugural, the folks that are helping to lay that foundation for your organization. So you've got your board. 3 to 5, I think, is a good amount. It's fewer people to manage. The minimum is 3 that you need for the IRS. So, if you really want to manage a board of 10 people, do your thing. I have no desire to do that. It's up to you. Your mileage may vary. So here's where it gets a little bit boring. So you're going to want to establish some bylaws. Google it. There's a lot of really great templates for organizational bylaws. Your articles of incorporation. Remember when I talked earlier about how a nonprofit is actually a corporation? You're incorporating a corporation, and that's what we're doing. So articles of incorporation are basically the ground rules for the organization. Again, lots of great resources on the internet. I can also help point you in the right direction. Send me a message, shoot me a note, happy to provide that. And your conflict of interest policy. So those are the 3 kind of main documents that we're going to need. We're going to need some bylaws, we're going to need an articles of incorporation template, and we're going to need a conflict of interest policy. Once you have all those, have a meeting. Remember those 3 to 5 board members you recruited? Bring everybody together, have a meeting, take some minutes, make all those things official. And what that means is you're just voting on those things. You're putting them into place. At this time, you're going to want to have your initial board sign a conflict of interest policy. This is something that organizations do annually. Why do we have a conflict of interest policy? Well, we do that so that boards of directors are not financially benefiting from serving on the board of a nonprofit. So nonprofits volunteer positions, being on the board of a nonprofit, and you're not financially compensated for that. And we also want to make sure that we're not giving a contract to a board member so that they can financially benefit, even if they're the greatest contractor, the greatest roofer, and that's fantastic. You can't financially benefit from that as a member of the board. So that's why we signed that conflict of interest policy, to make sure that the organization's resources are being spent judiciously. And this is an IRS thing, and just a really important thing to do. That's just some paperwork. So once you have all of that, you've approved your bylaws, you've incorporated your articles of incorporation, you've signed your conflict of interest policy, you're going to send those articles of incorporation to your state. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back to that same business entity website. You're going to file your articles of incorporation. You're going to request your name since no one's taken it. And you're going to send your state a few $100s, and they're going to incorporate you. You're going to become what's called a non-stock corporation. You're not tax exempt yet, though. This is what you have to do next. So now the IRS comes in. So you've done your state stuff, right? All the state compliance is ready. They're waiting for you. You're a non-stock corporation. Now you need to become tax exempt. This is where that 501c3 part comes in that we were talking about. You're going to go to the IRS website. You're going to request an employee identification number. It's like a social security number for an organization. That's the best way I can describe it. It's called an EIN. You may know what it is. You may not. You request one. Chances are it's instant. It's the only thing the IRS can do instantly. It's amazing. So you can get an EIN. So you just have that and put it away. And then you're going to file a 1023 form with the IRS. There are a couple different forms. The vast majority of brand new nonprofits are going to file what's called a E-Z, letter E, letter Z. Just write it down. It's a 3-page form. You're going to list your board of directors that we talked about. You're going to list your mission. You're going to categorize yourself. What type of organization am I? Am I human services? Am I animal welfare? Am I education? All of these different things. You're going to send that off to the IRS. 2 to 3 weeks, actually. They do it relatively quickly with the expedited process. If everything looks good, you get a letter that says, congratulations, you now are a 501c3 tax-exempt non-stock corporation, which is what we call a 501c3 nonprofit. Congratulations. Now, what happened? Honestly, 4 weeks.
Wow. That fast. That's surprising.
It's scary. I've got a really nice cheat sheet that I'm happy to send your way if you're interested. Scary. It's not. A lot of this stuff can be done, in tandem, and it's a relatively simple process if you know what you're doing. Google's a great resource. You can talk with somebody who knows what they're doing. Also, like me, hopefully, I think I know what I'm doing. I've done it a few times. And then once you've done that, you're compliant, but you've got to stay compliant. So that's a whole different ball of wax that maybe we can talk about later. It's just an annual thing that you want to file with the IRS. It's called a Form 990.
Okay.
You may have someone interested. Every organization, every nonprofit organization is required to file what's called a Form 990. And basically that highlights your revenues, your expenditures, your highest compensated employees. If you gave grants out, who did you give them to and when? It's just something to make sure that the organization is staying above board and that it's financially sound. So that comes later. But again, it's about 4 weeks from start to finish if you kind of fit the majority of criteria for those that just want to start their nonprofit.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for all that, Lily. I know it was a mouthful. Take a sip of coffee.
My coffee, but you know what? It's always the internet has an abundance of resources. There are many people who can help. I've helped 2 clients do this already. And it really is nice to have someone to bounce some ideas off of, whether it be the mission side, the wordsmithing, and really figuring out what your North Stars are going to be. And then on the compliance side as well.
Agreed. Well, thank you everyone who stuck with us through our first Brewing Success episode.
We did it.
We made it. And I don't see any questions right now, but please feel free to drop them when the video gets posted, or send us messages and we'll be happy to answer them. We can also answer them on the next live. So if you have a burning question or specific to your idea, we're happy to help you out there. And speaking of our next live, that's going to be on April 11th, same time, same place. We'll be posting about it to remind you, but we will be covering building your organization's voice and identity. So we're going to get really deep into that messaging and how you can talk to the public, use social media or not, email, and making sure that people really understand what you want to do and how you're going to change the world. So
important. And this is, we've sort of designed this series to build on itself. This one was a little bit more niche, I think, but everything from here on out really benefits everyone in the nonprofit space, even if you're not in the nonprofit space. Building an organization's voice and identity and the sort of nuance around that is something that we can all be learning about and benefiting from and continuing to refine. It's been a really interesting exercise starting my own business, because not only am I subject matter, but I'm trying to build my own brand as I'm doing that. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll definitely be April 11th, and I will be taking. But Bree, it's a pleasure. Always great to chat with you. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the Instagram Live. I think I got my 64th follower.
Yay! We did it. You're viral.
Maybe I'll get to 70 by next month. We'll see what we can do.
We're going to make it happen. Thank you so much, Lily. Till next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.